Hi everyone, this is Ben Simonson. In this video, we're going to be talking about the process of creating this piece of concept, the techniques and brushes that I used. Now, for 8 of the 10 years I've been working in video games, the style was cartoonish, and for nearly 6 of those years, it was toys that were made out of plastic. So, all of the tools that I used in Photoshop were geared towards creating those smooth, polished surfaces. Now, for the past 2 years of working for Warner Brothers, I've had to work in a style focused on gritty realism. Now, I love variety, so getting an opportunity to shake things up a bit is a lot of fun for me. For the most part, the tools that I carried over from my days with Disney have worked in this transition, but only with a lot of photo bashing. The successful use of photo bashing relies mostly on finding the right reference image for the right spot in your concept. For example, let's say I want to add an old barrel to my scene. You'd have to spend a lot of time trying to find the right image of a barrel in the right perspective, lighting, and age by Googling it, then clipping it out and compositing it in. This isn't the only option though. You could use Sketchfab, which is way better but still limited on options. Another way is blocking in a simple shape with form added through using a soft airbrush, then overlaying or blending in textures to get the look you want. You still have to spend time finding the right texture. Honestly, all of these options will help you get good results, but some take more time than others. My latest experiment is to modify my tools in Photoshop so I can get similar results by simply painting. As an artist, I like this option the best so far. I can actually paint instead of merely compositing stuff. It's also quick and allows for happy accidents, those things that I may not have thought of as I am designing the piece. You'll see later in the painting that I do use a few of these other techniques to get the look that I want, but for the most part I let the modified Photoshop brushes do the work. In order to get to gritty realism faster, I had to modify my tools in Photoshop. To do this, I bought or downloaded several brush packs from other concept artists that I admire. I also watched a lot of tutorial videos online to pick up tips on how these artists work and how they use their brushes. I'll include a link to their amazing work and where to find their brushes in the video's description. After sifting through hundreds of brushes, including my own creations, I began modifying their properties in the brush settings panel of Photoshop to meet my needs. I've narrowed down my tool set to 70 or so brushes that do various things, but I only end up using 5 or so brushes when painting. More than half of my tool set is a custom set of brushes used for very specific purposes like creating effects. This painting is my first attempt at using this new tool set in a production setting to see how useful it is. During the process, I found brushes that I needed and didn't have, or ones that I probably will hardly ever use. So this toolset will continue to evolve over time. Before I started painting, I collected some reference of environments that I liked, and I ended up choosing one that had a lot of character and mood to it. Because videos are better viewed in a horizontal format, I needed to add more to the left and right of my image. To do this, I found other reference that I quickly composited together to create the scene. Now of course, this isn't very cohesive, but it's enough reference to help get me started. I start by establishing the foreground and background of my scene in a simple black and white design. This helps to remind me of the simple value groupings that I need to stay in when things get crazy later. Just like doing an underpainting, I set the overall values and hues to something that is closer to what I need. The brushes that I use have a lot of texture and color dynamics applied to them. This gives each brush a ton of variety, and so I can suggest details that I would have had to spend time normally photo bashing in just one stroke. So once I have the foreground shape loosely figured out, I lock the transparency of it and then just start slopping around the paint. You'll notice that I'm not really drawing here. I'm thinking more about the overall shapes and values while using the biggest brush possible. I also use the Lasso Tool to establish the specific shapes and edges that I want to keep tight. Even though I was using the Lasso Tool to define edges, I didn't actually create new layers with them. I tried to keep the layers in this painting to a minimum. The exception to that rule is the main rock shape in the center of the composition. At one point, I make a selection of it and cut it to a new layer. I did this because I knew that it would be a focal point and I wanted to keep the shape clean. A lot of making something look real in a painting is ambient occlusion. I do this by adding ambient occlusion in areas where light can't reach, like under leaves and in the crevices of the tree trunk. This is a capture of my layers. Besides the two main layers of foreground and background, I added new ones as needed for things like foliage, where I wanted to keep their shape from blending into the mess of paint strokes that I was laying down. I like to work with my piece small throughout the painting so that I can tell if the overall values and the big shapes are reading at a distance. It's only at the very end that I zoom in for the details. I label my brushes based on their use. Because I was experimenting with this new set, I ended up rearranging them based on what they ended up being useful for. During the painting, I found that the brush labeled Paint, Grunge, Bristle worked well for a lot of things, including rock textures, ground materials, leaves, and rim lights along the edges of heavily textured objects. I then add a character for a story element. In college, I had a really great figure painting professor by the name of Rick Graham. And one day in class, he asked the student next to me why he hadn't started painting yet. The student said that he didn't know where to begin. I remember Rick saying, "It doesn't matter, just put a mark down." I learned that day that you can't work with nothing, but you can always work with something. So finding a silhouette of a man for my character is just me putting down something that I can start working with. As you can see, I change it up quite a bit. Towards the end of this piece, I make some color adjustments to help make it more cohesive. I then realized that my guy needed something interesting to look at instead of a blank wall. As I worked on this piece, I got a little worried about the composition. That big contrasting rock is nearly smack dab in the middle of the painting. But in the end, that hard-edged value contrast helped to bring your eye over to the character.